What I'd like to show you now is a way to design your radial balance project using Photoshop. Some of you have some skill now from the second project, the mirror balance project, using Photoshop to basically as a digital sketchbook in order to come up with ideas in a way to form the composition in an easier manner than using transparency paper. Here you scan the images or pull them from the internet and assemble them in Photoshop in a way that hopefully is visually appealing to you and to the viewer. And what I'll show you is just a few ways in which you can design, as I said, your radial balance project in Photoshop. What I'd like to show you first, though, here are some past student examples of radial balance projects. This one right here is by a student named Alicia. This was designed right around the time of Halloween. It was right before Halloween, and so the theme she chose to pick was Dia de los Muertos, or the Day of the Dead. And so she has skeletons in there, 3 roses. It's hard to see 2 of the roses, which are actually kind of just look like textured background, but it's actually showing the petals of the rose that she found. And then the 2 other areas are from kind of like a lace doily pattern that she had as well. And so she combined those elements, the rose, the lace, the skeletons, the hand, all together in order to make this kind of interesting composition. And you can see this takes from the mirror balance project about having reflected areas and just elaborates upon that. Instead of having just 2 areas one area of reflection, in the radial balance you want at least 2 areas of reflection or more, hopefully more. It usually makes it more interesting. When you have a lot of different elements, not necessarily contradiction, but contrasting one another in order to make a very dynamic composition. So let's go through a few other, some of these are on your handout, but let me show you some more here. This one, kind of a simple one, just using some kind of mineral patterns there, some bubbles, kind of a abstracted sun pattern as well. It's okay, it's just sort of interesting, but I would hope that you would push your design a little bit further. The next one here, different patterns, looks like flower patterns, different kind of symbolic kind of symbols there as well. Maybe not as organized. There's a lot of variety in the design, but maybe not as organized as it could be. This is kind of an interesting one, in which these are all done in pen and ink, of course, as the finished product. This one, the student kind of wanted to break out of the circle, so the radial edge is not a limitation, but something to play with there, having that open areas on the side there, and then having those jetting kind of dotted lines that go out as well, to kind of push the viewer's eye out away from the circle and out into the more of a negative space. Here's some different symbols there put together, kind of in a different way, in which the radial design is kind of split right in half, and then the 2 other sides there are kind of at different angles there. Kind of interesting. Here, once again, the student explored kind of opening up the design, where the kind of the rope intertwined kind of chains, I guess you could say there. Some more curvilinear, some more at angles, and the open space on the inside, on the right side is very interesting as well. It opens up that whole half of the design, and in the middle, some bird-like forms flying across. So it's a very interesting design. This one's real kind of elaborate. Here we have different kind of floral or flower patterns that are interwoven together, with the background being some kind of rope or some kind of stick element that goes through it as well. Very interesting. Using different animal patterns, giraffe patterns, and different textures here put together. The little fire patterns as well on the outside. So you can bring together a lot of different elements together that may not have any relationship to one another, but it makes for a very interesting design when you simply use those elements as abstracted patterns. Here, the student used fruits and vegetables as the elements of their design, where the circles and the curvilinear lines are not just pattern, but they are representational of fruits and vegetables. and lettuce leaves and different kind of leaves. Here, this one is kind of like a squiggly pattern that used leaf forms and kind of vine forms there, and a flower. You can see that kind of like daisy form right in the middle. Very interesting. Here, the student kind of put this triangle right in the middle to kind of break up the radial design or the circle of the pattern with wood grain that they used. The student actually took some beads and put them on the scanner. And actually went over and traced a part of the door, the wood grain that was actually on the door. Just took some transparency paper and just found some interesting patterns on the door. And then some of the other ones were just some leaves that they thought had some interesting veins that went through the leaf there. And so you can almost do anything to create those kind of abstracted patterns from. So really kind of keep your eye open for just interesting patterns and maybe incorporate those into your design. A few more here. This using seashells, right? Sand dollars and different shells there, and octopus tentacles there as well, and some lotus flowers, I believe, as well. The next one was very interesting. I liked it a lot. He used it was kind of spiraling stem forms. So you had some leaf patterns there they found as well put together. You can tell he's using stippling in those areas to give it a little more volume in the circle elements. Almost he wanted it to look like the formation of like a planet, and so he took the flat radial design by adding the stippling, those dots, right? It adds dimensional depth to the composition, adding a lot to it. And if you look in the black area of the stem, on the lower left-hand corner, you notice that the white is actually from a white gel pen there that he used in order to bring the white back into those black areas so that it would maintain the volume that is on the other side. Okay, and this one right here is by Joffe. As you can see, this one was actually very flat. He used had these bird forms. He put them together, had them cutting across, breaking the circle. The wings there, you can see break the circle as well. It's interesting how the bird is kind of, the wing is split between the negative and the positive, or the black and white as well. What I was going to say, this design was actually real flat. He went back in with the stippling with his pins, his fine sketch pens, and built up some volume areas there in the wings and in the birds themselves, and really heightened the visual interest of this design. Leah's here. She used a sea shell motif, I guess you could say, with some flower patterns. She had kind of a lizard patterns there as well, like a snake form, and then like a conch shell as well. And so I thought this was a very successful design. Here Megan used tree in the middle, the birch wood there is kind of interesting as well, that she used just as kind of an abstract pattern. And then the owls she put in as well, the dark and the one that's on the top and the bottom. She actually had made a mistake on this and actually cut it out and put it back together. And I was real happy that she succeeded in bringing the design together. This one was really neat, I thought. A student took a photograph of himself and then basically traced pattern onto his face and such. Took that on transparency and basically went around and put it 4 times there around, so these kind of faces are looking at each other with the opposite forms there. It's kind of very interesting. This one's Rory's. He had this kind of wave surfer forms there, kind of coming out with the big hands. Very interesting design. Roshan's very cool. Hands, eyes. Some of it, mostly it's wood grain that he used as those patterns, and almost looks like fingernail prints as well. Very interesting design. Saints here, she used found floor patterns once again, different kind of mechanical things in there as well. Took a bunch of different abstract forms and just bring them together. Here, this one almost doesn't look like it's opposite, but it is if you really look at the way the stippling is done, and just different patterns brought together to give it kind of a almost like a frequency look in the way that the design is put together. And here's the last one. This one, very dynamic image there. You can see how the kind of the starburst there of these almost like shield forms that come out. Very interesting. So where does a student look for images? One of the best places for the student to look for images is on the internet at one of the stock photography sites. Here we have photosearch.com, the photo with an F instead of a PH. This is a great resource for students to use to find images. If you look at the top here, it has a little search area here, and then you can type anything in. I usually, for the students, I always use butterfly to look up, just as an example. You can see there, it's doing its search. And you can see we have 157 pages of butterfly images, and so I'm sure there'll be something that you can find to use. This one's very interesting. This would be a great pattern. What you want to really focus on is patterns. Don't get preoccupied with imageries of humans and such. Look for more patterns first, because you want to build it up in kind of a three-layer form where the background's pattern, maybe have some middle elements, and then have maybe a finishing thing that you can really focus in on the top. And so you want to look first for patterns that you can use for your background. And so this one's very interesting. Let me click on this. Now I usually like blowing it up one more time, and what you can do is just download it to your hard drive, save the image to your desktop, and then you can use this in Photoshop. I'll show you how we can minimize some of these copyright stamps on these images if you're using it to print out, so it won't interfere with your design. And so I'll show you that in a moment. Let me go back here and just show you a few other ones. Let's see, we'll go to the next one. If there's anything else here that's kind of interesting. Just to let you know, see, here's another interesting kind of pattern there as well that you could click on and download to your hard drive as well. Maybe create a folder and have these all saved to those folders. And so those are some of the patterns that you want to look for the background. And then you also want to look for interesting things that can go on top. Like these butterfly elements would be really cool to maybe put on top as well as a second or top layer of interest on your design. And so I've already collected a few of these patterns, and so let me go ahead and bring up Photoshop here, and let me show you some of the images that I have here. There are different ones, different patterns and such that I've collected here that we will use. And so let me first begin by showing you how to make your template. And so what you want to do is make a new file. We'll do File, New, and I've already have mine set to resolution 200. Remember, anytime you want to print anything out in decent or good quality in a printer, you want at least 200 dpi or pixels in it per inch. And so I have it at 200, and I went ahead and set it by 7 width, 7 height for the inches. That is what the radial design, that's the minimum size of the radial image, and so I'm just going to go ahead and set it at that. So inches 7 by 7 and pixels 200. And it will open our file here, and let me shrink it down to fit it onto the screen. Right now it's empty. Remember that when you have the checkerboard pattern in the background, that means it's empty. What we want to do is go ahead and click on to down here where it says Custom Shape Tool. And so usually you'll see it's on rectangle. What we want to do is go down to the ellipse tool. And remember, in Photoshop, anytime you want a perfect circle or a perfect square, what you do with the ellipse tools, you hold down the Shift button there, and you can see by hitting Shift and pulling out, I get a nice circle there. And so I'm going to go ahead and let it fill in, and I have a black circle. Make sure it's on black. The black is on the top. Remember, by hitting this arrow, you can flip back and forth between white and black, or if you hit the X button on your keyboard, you can see where it goes back and forth between black and white. You could do colors by simply clicking on it, of course, remember, and you can select colors. Here, you can see that's red and white, or white being on top and red being the background. If you want to get back to black and white, you simply just click here on the button here, and now it'll put it back to black and white. You can also hit the D button, but right now just hit the black and white. It's much easier. And then what we want to do in order to get this circle to exactly 7 by 7, the easiest thing to do is once you pull out your perfect circle, go up here and go to Trim and just select Trim. You'll see it has some options and selections here. Just by default it should be fine. Just go ahead and hit OK, and it should cut it down or crop it down there to where the circle hits all the edges there. You can see, right, there's the circle there is touching all the edges. And so now what you can simply do is go up and go image size, and when you select image size, it's going to be whatever default size that you pulled your circle out to. We want it, of course, to be 7 by 7, right? So we hit 7 there, and if we have constrained proportions there, it should be 7 by 7 by 200. Now remember, that's what my original file was, but when I pulled out my circle, it was smaller. The trim cut it down a little bit, so now I'm bringing it back. So if I hit OK, we're going to see where you now have a 7-inch circle, or diameter circle that we have here. And now what we need to do is go ahead and fill in the areas here around the outside of the circle. We could do it this way, which would be fine. But another way to do it, of course, is go to, what we want to do is make the canvas a little bit larger. Now remember, the difference between canvas and image size is that image size increases the entire image, whereas canvas just does the area of the support, meaning that if you had an image of a butterfly and you did image size increase, that would make the butterfly go from, example, 2 inches to 5 inches, if that's what the number you typed in. Whereas canvas size, the butterfly would maintain the 2-inch size, but the area around it would increase, meaning that just the background of the canvas, the area to work on, would increase. And so that is what I'm doing here. Want to go ahead and take the canvas to 10 inches, and we'll go 10 inches here on the bottom as well, so 10 by 10. You notice anytime you increase the size of a file, or the size of the area you're working, the size of the file itself increases as well. And so now we have the 10 by 10, and you can see here, let me shrink it down, where I filled in the white is there on the edges. Let me go ahead and dump in the white. I just have the paint bucket here. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure white's on the top, and I'm going to dump in the white and to fill in the rest. Okay, now this looks like the template that we need to be using for our Radial design project. However, we only have one layer. Let me go ahead and pull my layer palettes over here. If you notice, let me pull my history palette over as well. You notice we only have one layer. We need more than one layer because we're going to act like this being like a sandwich in which we can pull images into it, move it around, maybe break the circle as well. And right now we wouldn't be able to do that because it's flat. So let me go ahead and right click on this and say duplicate layer, and we'll call this white temp, for the white template. Whoop. White temp. Okay, I'll hit OK. So now I have basically two of these layers. What you can do now is get your magic wand and simply click into the circle, and you can see it selects the circle there of the black, and I can just hit delete. Now over here you notice you can see the checkerboard, but in the actual image you're saying, well, what happened? It doesn't look like anything happened. But if I hide this bottom layer, now you can tell there is a cutout area. Let me show you here as well. So I have the two layers, the top layer and the bottom. Let me show you also, I can pull something in. Let me I'll select this butterfly up here. Let me get the move tool and just select onto the image, and you should just be able to see how you can just pull it right over. Let me pull this up. And so now, the butterfly now is on top. You can see here it's on the top layer. Let me pull this underneath. I just select and I'm holding down, and I'll drop it. You see how the fist is there? Now I'll drop it right underneath, and it disappeared because now it's underneath this white template, the white top, right? And so I have my layer highlighted, so I can, even though I couldn't see it, I know where it is up here. I can still move it around. And so this is going to be really nice to organize your space now, organize your composition. We can transform. Remember from the first tutorial I showed you how to increase the size and scale of your images, and so let's free transform this. Control T, remember, and you can see the bounding box there, and let me grab it. I'm holding down the shift button to make sure it's even, so I'm going to pull it out to get a nice big butterfly here, and I'm happy with the size. Remember, you have to always hit enter to lock it in, so I hit enter, and now I have this butterfly. I want to get rid of the edges. Now on this one is very simple. Let me blow this up a little bit more so you can tell. One more time here. Let me pull it down. You can see here this is all white on the outside of the butterfly, so that's fantastic for a designer because you simply just go over here and get the magic wand, the one that looks like the sparkler, and if I click into that area, you can see here I have highlighted the butterfly area. You can see where the dancing ants has gone around all around the outside of this butterfly, and now by simply hitting delete, you can delete it out, right? I'm going to hit Control D to deselect, or if you have to deselect also, you can come up here to select, deselect as well. That's what I'm hitting, Control D, and so deselect the area. So now let me shrink it out just a little bit. I'm hitting spacebar to get the hand so I can pull it over there. And now we have our butterfly, and I'm going to put it on the Move tool, which is V, right? Move tool, V. I can move this wherever I want. Now, if, say I wanted this on the outside of the template for it to break the circle, like I mentioned in some of those student designs that I showed you, you can do that and put it right here. One interesting thing you can do in Photoshop to create more of a dimensional space is what's called adding a drop shadow. And by adding the drop shadow, you can come up here to Layers and Layer Styles, and you can see these different options here: drop shadow, inner shadow, outer glow, inner glow, bevel and emboss, satin, color overlay, gradient overlay, pattern overlay, stroke. Excuse me. You can select those, and those are options that you can apply to individual layers, right? And so let me select drop shadow, and what you'll see here is you'll see a little palette pop up here, and let me pull it over so y'all can see it. And I have drop shadow selected. And when you look at the butterfly right now, you can barely tell. Let me select it off to see if you can see where something happened over here in this antenna. Let me do it again so you can just tell. Okay, let me make it a little more dramatic. If you actually click on drop shadow, you see you have all these options here. One is size. Let me just pull size out. You can see it kind of adds a little more shadow there to the edge. Spread, you can increase the spread of the shadow, like it's stronger. Distance, you can make the shadow go further away. Here you can tell, right? It's gone kind of to one side. Let me pull the distance back. One of the other things you can do is change the angle. You can move it to one side or the other if you want to. Let me see. It's not that dramatic right now, but on other images it would be more dramatic. Let me decrease the spread a little bit. And so the reason you would add a drop shadow is because what that does is it makes the image look like it's coming off the surface, right? And so now this butterfly kind of sits on the surface rather than being flat with the surface. Another way to do a drop shadow, which is kind of interesting, is actually to go ahead. One thing let me note here, when you apply drop shadows or any of those kind of layer effects, you'll see a little F here, right? And you'll see a little arrow, and you can actually click on here and you'll have different effects. You can actually take the effects off. You see how it disappeared? If I click on it again, those effects will come back. Remember, the eyeballs are just basically hide things, right? So there we make the butterfly disappear and make it come back. And so that's one way to do it. If you don't want to come up and use layer style, another way to bring the drop shadow palette up, or the layer style palette up, is to simply double click on the layer. Let me do it down here just to show you. If I double click on the white template here, just in this space here, you do it again. Get a little further over. Come on, there it goes. If you hit the word, sometimes that gives you the option to change it, but you can see where you double click in the layer there, and usually down in the corner, it'll pop up the layer style palette. And there's different ones: drop shadow, inner shadow, different ones there. So let me cancel that out. What I want to do next is, let me show you a different way to do a drop shadow. I'm going to duplicate this butterfly. Say duplicate, and I'll say OK. And so now I have two of them here. Let me pull one down here on the other edge. Let me go ahead and let me double click on this, and let me go ahead and take the layer style off. I'm going to take the drop shadow off of this one, so it's a little flat there. Okay, and what we can do now is actually go up to the image menu here, adjustments, and go to hue saturation. So I'm going to select hue saturation. And one of the things I can do is actually take the saturation all the way down. You can see there it lost all the color. Saturation refers to color, right? So the more amplified it is, the stronger the colors are. You can see here, if we compare these two butterflies, you can see by increasing the saturation, it makes the colors burn in a little bit more. But I want to take that all the way down. And the lightness too, I want to take that down. If I push it up, it's going to make the image brighter or wider, and so you can actually make a wide image if you want it. You can see there, that's kind of interesting. Let me hit OK here just to show you what that looks like. I'm on the move tool, so that's kind of neat. You can make a nice white pattern there, right? Let me undo that. Let me go back. Remember in your histories, I just went back. Okay, and image adjustments, hue saturation, and so I'm going to take the saturation all the way down, and I'll take the lightness all the way down. And now we have a black butterfly or a black silhouette, right? And so let me move this up into the white area so you can see that. And so this also is another way that we make a kind of interesting shadow. Let me go back to layer 2. It's actually underneath it. So what I want to do is take the colored layer of the butterfly and move it up over the black layer. You see there? And let's pull it over a little bit more. And you can kind of create kind of a cool shadow effect there like that, using humans as well. Or if you want silhouettes as well, that's another way to do a silhouette form. Silhouettes are great. Say you wanted to, let's drop this colored butterfly underneath the white template. Okay, now and let's move this over so it disappears. What's kind of interesting, if you go over and if you create these silhouette forms like we have here, I have it over a wide area, and I can go over and select the magic wand. And I don't want to select, well, I guess yes, I do want to select, I misspoke there. I want to select the butterfly, and you can see the dancing ants are around the butterfly form. And what I do is go to the white template. Let me move it down there, and I'll click on white template. And if I simply hit delete, what is kind of interesting is, let me go up here and hide this butterfly. You can see where it kind of like peeks through. And so let me deselect the dancing ants, right? And so you actually have the move tool. I'm going to go to the colored layer, and this little butterfly now is like hiding underneath that layer, right? And so this is an interesting way of creating kind of some interesting designs. You can create silhouette forms, delete them out, and have images underneath that kind of poke through or that come from underneath, right? And so that's another option for you when you're building your designs. Let me go back here. So that's not what I necessarily want for right now. Okay, now we got the white template layer and the shadow and then the butterfly as well. Let me pull in a couple background patterns. Let me select here, let's see, kind of an interesting one. I kind of like this one up here. Let me get this up here. Now if you have a Macintosh, you can do what I just did there, of course, but unfortunately the PC doesn't have that kind of cool function, but nevertheless. Let me pull this texture pattern over. I'm going to drop it in there. And let me pull it back so y'all can see it. And so it's there. Now you're looking at it and you're going, well, I mean, what's interesting about that? But what we can do is use the free transform tool, Control T or Apple T on your Macintosh. And I'm going to hold the Shift button down, and I'm going to pull it out to make it larger. Okay. Now we can see those copyrighted images, of course. But we're going to use this as a basis to abstract from, and so we're not necessarily using it straight. And so it's fair use for right now, all right? And so let me pull that underneath the template. So I grab the layer, and I'm just going to pull it underneath the template there. And I can move it around and say I wanted it here. And it kind of makes a kind of interesting layer there. Now remember, we want to first start with black and white or grayscale. And so what we want to do is go up here and get rid of the color for this background layer. Now we can do that in different ways. We can use simply desaturate, right? It's a quick function button there, and you can see it dropped the color. Let's undo that. And another option is we can go do what we did with the butterfly, where we can go to hue saturation, and we can take the saturation down. So once again, desaturate, that's what it just did, right? But best way actually, I think, for taking an image to grayscale is using the channel mixer. And so here's the channel mixer. I click on that, and it gives us some great options. I'm going to click monochrome, and we can make the contrast a little stronger or take it up a little bit, make it more white. We can increase the blue, or we can take the blue down. We can push the green up a little bit, or pull it back. And the red too, we can crank the reds or pull that down. And so it just gives us a few more options there. Let me see, I don't like what it looks like right now. Let me just do a few more adjustments here. I like that. Let me see what it looks like by moving the red up a little bit. Okay, that's decent for what I want to do right now. And so let me move this around. Now many of you are looking, you can see, well, it says photosearch.com right there. That kind of ruins everything, right? Well, in a moment I'll show you how to mask that or take that out so that it won't be in your design. But first let me show you what you want to do is duplicate this first, because we want to have a mirrored image. And so let's duplicate this layer, say OK. I would recommend naming these because sometimes you get a lot of these. You can put them in folders. You can click on here, folder, and drop them into folders and stuff, so that's a little more organized if you want. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll just say background. We'll click here and we'll call that background. And so those are in there. So I have the two of them here. Let me click on this right here. The reason you put it in folders is because we can close those folders and it doesn't take up so much space. So if you have a smaller monitor, this is one way to organize your space. And so let me click on layer 3 here. That's one of the wings. And let me pull it over. And so what do we have to do now? We want to mirror this, right? And so remember, to mirror it, we have to come over here to the free transform, or the transform button under the edit, and we want to flip it. And so we want to flip it horizontal first, and that's one way. And however, it's still not completely mirrored because it's a radial design. We need to flip it one more time. We need to flip it vertical as well. And so now we have a true opposite, right? You can see where the photo search is read this way and now it's read that way, right? So now you have to flip it twice in order to get it a true opposite, or a true mirror, excuse me. Right now I'm just tapping it over there, kind of getting it centered there, and I kind of like that background. That's kind of an interesting background. Let me pull one more kind of textured background pattern in. Let's go for this leaf right here. This is kind of interesting as well. And let me go ahead and pull this leaf in. Once again, I just have it on the move tool. And what I want to do is just click in the middle of the image and drop it in there, right? And so it keeps jumping over because I'm making my monitor small so that y'all can see it. But so I moved it back over here. Let's see. Now I want to make this larger. And luckily, we dropped it in and it went right into our folder there. And so that was kind of fortuitous for us. So let's make this free transform, make this a little larger here. Now you don't have to hold the shift button. You can actually move it in different angles, if you want it real thin, if you want to pull it out in different directions. I kind of like that. Pull it down a little bit. It's kind of neat how that droops down there. I'm going to hit OK. We can always go back and edit things out. If you wanted to take a little area out here, you could actually come over with the eraser. I'm going to make my eraser a little bit larger. Okay, you could erase things down, right, if you wanted. Let me hit undo so that we get it back. Another one of the things you could do is come up and get this butterfly, and we can get the magic wand and select the butterfly, and we could actually move this down. I just selected right in the middle, and I'm going to put it over this leaf form. And if I go down and select the leaf form, right now it's highlighted, I can now delete out the inside of this leaf. And so I'm just going to simply hit delete, and you can see there, I'm going to hit Control D to take the dancing ants off. You can see there how I kind of cut down into it, right, and created a kind of a real cool silhouette form. And so that's another neat way of kind of adding different elements to your design. Now you could add a drop shadow to that and maybe add a little more dimension or depth to it. Let me double click on this. If I can get the layers palette to jump up here. Here it goes. Let's see, I'm going to add a little drop shadow to that. And let's pull this down so you can see Let me increase the size a little bit. You can see a little separation there. Let me increase the spread a little bit. Okay. It adds a little dimension, a little depth to that, and so that's a kind of an interesting thing to kind of play with, is these drop shadows. You can really create a very deep space by adding those into your designs and your compositions. I'm going to leave it like that for right now, so I'm happy with that. Some of the other things, bevel edge is kind of neat. What that does is kind of cleans up your edge there, adds a little kind of bevel to it, like the side of a table, you know how it's kind of rounded off. Contour, textures, you can apply textures, different glow effects. You can see the textures on there. Let me take that texture off. Outer glow, let's see if that comes up. You can see a little bit of that yellow around it. Inner shadow, changed up there a little bit. Satin, that's going to apply kind of a diffused layer on top of it there. And of course, if you click on these, you have adjustments for each layer as well when you highlight them. Take satin off. Color overlay, you can make it one color. You can come up here and change the color, right? Click on it, pick any color you want, blue, turquoise, you know, and so now it's selected there. Gradients, let's take off the color overlay so you can see the gradient. You can see a nice gradient, which means going from one color to the other. Another one here would be pattern overlay, and you can click on different patterns. Let me select pattern overlay. You can see here we have by default a few patterns here, the different ones that you can select from, right? So these are all options that you can play with to see what actually you can come up with. Stroke just puts a line on the outside, and so by default it's red, see? And so we have it there. I'll just hit OK and leave it there so you can see some of the ways of doing that. Sometimes they look a little 80s in the way they're done, but I think that's kind of might be interesting for some people. And so what we have to do now is duplicate this, right, and mirror it in the other side. And so let me go ahead and do that. Duplicate, I just right click and hit duplicate. And so now I have two of these kind of textured pattern backgrounds. Let me get the move tool so I can move it to the other side. You can see there are two here. And so let me move it to the other side. Okay. That's way, okay, let me get it down a little bit. And so what do we have to do? Once again, we have to flip it vertical and flip it horizontal so that it would be a true mirrored image. So let's do that real fast. Transform, flip horizontal. It's going to flip it on the other side. Okay. And so let's go ahead and let's flip it on the vertical, and we'll have a true mirrored image. Okay, and then I'm going to pull it up here so you can see the butterfly. Pull it over. Get it in there a little bit. I'm going to push it in just a little bit. Okay, so those are a few options that you have using Photoshop for different ways of building backgrounds and such. I'm going to show you a few other things here. Let me just hide these or close this file right here. Let's now show you how you can take an image, take an element out of an image and pull it into your design. This is a way of masking an image, selecting a specific area and then copying that area and bringing it in. This is what people who use Photoshop do all the time. Like here we have an image here of a butterfly that has a background that you couldn't use the magic wand to select. We have, let's see, let me click to see how it's not going to grab everything. It's going to grab a lot of it. So we could actually kind of go in here with the magic wand and delete out some spots. But then it's not going to be super clean, because if we wanted to get part of the stem or different parts of it, it's going to leave a lot of scrap around. And so instead of using the magic wand, a better way of doing it is actually using the mask tool. And so that's right here. And so if you can see here, it says quick mask mode, which is actually Q. We can go in and out of quick mask mode. Let me first though show you, here we have some copyright stamps on our image here. Let me show you how you can go in and take these out. The two tools that you want to use is one, the Band-Aid tool, is what I call the Band-Aid tool, is what is really called the healing brush. And let me select that. There's a healing branch and there's a stamp tool. Healing brush and the stamp tool, the clone stamp. These are two tools that are very similar. The healing brush though is different from the stamp tool in that it tries to take a 50-50 relationship to the area that you're working on from the area that you want to sample from, and it basically 50-50s those and kind of combines them so that it's not a kind of strong change. Let me show you what I mean here. Let me click the healing brush, and right now it's really large. Let me shrink it down here. Let me go a little bit smaller. Okay, that's about right. I'm going to hit enter, and let me blow this image up a little bit so you can see those stamps, right? In order to get this off, what you can do is what I'm going to hit is my Alt button or Alt option on the Macintosh, and you see you get a little bullseye there, right? And so what I want to do is I want to sample. Let's see, this is what I want to take out, and so let me go ahead and sample this area right here. And like this, I just click here, and what that does is it tells Photoshop this is the area that I want to sample from. And now I'm just going to go right over this, and you can see how I can slowly start taking this or diffusing this out a little bit. Right. What the unfortunate thing is my healing brush is a little too large. Let me go back here, and let's go to the healing brush, the first one. Let me go back one more. Let me make my healing brush a little smaller, and let me sample from a better area. Let me sample from right there. I'm going to hit the Alt button, hit the bullseye, and I'm going to start to softly try to take this out. And you can actually hold down the button there. You can see there's a line there that's going, and when I let go, you can see where Photoshop's going to actually try to take the ratio of the two areas that I'm sampling from. One is, you see where the cross hair is, that's actually the area that it's sampling from. You can see where the cross hair is, it's kind of a reddish tone, and where the circle is kind of a reddish tone also, right? So I'm going to let go, and you can see there, it tried to kind of blend the areas together. There's this few little maybe spots that maybe are blemished or imperfections that I would just go back in and hit the Alt button in, and we can just kind of smooth those out. I'm going to smooth some of these out here, and you can see it kind of starts to blend in a lot better. I'm going to sample here. I hit the Alt button, and I'm just going to sample these out a little bit more. I like to tap it every once in a while, just because if there's something I don't like, I can go back with the histories, or I can go back in, and it allows me to clean it up a little bit more. So I tend to tap a little bit as I go around there. And let's see, let's go in here, let's go up here, and we basically can get this looking like it never was touched for the most part. There's a couple areas there that I want to go back and clean up. Let's see, I'm just going to clean this up a little bit more, just so y'all can see where you can really take it out. Let me see, that's a little strong there. Take that down a little bit. Let's take this down a little bit. And let's sample from here. I usually sample from a few spots. And you can see where basically I'm taking this out where you really can't see it. This is what, when they refer to airbrushing, this is what airbrushing basically is referring to. And so if somebody has wrinkles or blemishes on their face, this is a way of going in there and taking those out and making the face look so almost perfect. And that's why when you look at magazines and print ads and things, you notice that you never see anybody with freckles or blemishes or tattoos. This is basically when they refer to airbrushing, this is what it means. The other one is the stamp tool, and instead of doing a 50-50 ratio, it does basically 100%. And so let me show you. Same thing, you hit the Alt button to get the bullseye, and so let me show you. Look, I'll sample this butterfly wing right here. Okay, I sampled it. Now I can actually, you can see where, I can just brush in another butterfly here, basically. Get the top of the wing there, and you can see where the crosshairs are. And basically, let me go out here, hit his little antennae, You can see there where it's doing 100% copy, right? And so let me put the whole little butterfly there again, and so that does 100% stamp on top of it, and so that's useful for things like hair. If somebody is premature balding, you can go in and put hair in spots, or for many other things, putting flowers in and different things like that, covering areas. And so those are two real powerful tools that you can use with Photoshop: the healing tool, which is the Band-Aid, and the stamp tool. So let me go back here. Let me just click here to healing. What I want to do is show you how to use the quick mask tool. And so what that does, as I was telling you, is a way to select a specific image, a very complicated image, and select it out perfectly, and so you can apply it to your design. This is something that people use, like I've done it with family photos, where you go and you take professional portraits of the family, multiple images, and you get them all back, and some people look good in one photo and other people look good in the other. And so you can actually go in and select the faces, and you can put them all into one, so everybody has their perfect face, or the image, photo of their perfect face put together. And it's kind of like Frankenstein, right? Reassembling people, but it's a way of having a perfect photo, right? And that's what Photoshop will allow you to do. And so here, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to hit Quick Mask. You can see it says Edit in Quick Mask mode. You can just hit the Q button. So I select that. Now when you do that, what you want to do is come up and hit the brush, and when you go over your thing, what you want to do is paint in the area that you want. And what's great about this is you can of course increase the brush size to super gigantic or super small. You can go down to, this is a 1 pixel brush, right? That's like a one little dot brush, and you can see where you can fill in. This is a larger area, so I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger. That's maybe a little too big. Let me cut that in half. Okay, that's good. And you can see, even though this is black here, it's actually painting in red. And that's because when we get done here, whatever we paint in is what's going to be basically selected. And so I'm coming in, and now if there's some weird area that you needed to have a smaller brush, like say this little area here, I can just right click and I can make it smaller, and I can go in and get these little spots that maybe a bigger brush couldn't get. When you get the antenna, you can go to a 1 pixel brush. It's best to blow these things up as large as you can so you can see what you are getting or what you're not getting, right? Let me make my brush a little bit larger so I can do this a little quicker. That's too big once again. Let me go down. Okay. And so I'm going to fill all this in. So what I want to get is all the brown. And so let me try to get as much as I can with this bigger brush. And I'm just painting it in as best as I can. Okay. Let's see. Come on, get in there. Now, if you go outside the line, say right now, oh my gosh, I ruined it, right? Now you can just come up here and get the eraser, and the eraser is really big. Let me make it a little smaller. I'll just right click there, and so you can go back and erase out the area that you went over, or it went too far out, right? You can erase that, right? So we don't want to do that, so we go back. Let me go back to the paintbrush. Remember, paintbrush is the B button on your keyboard, right? You just hit the B button. It'll pop it back. So when you get really good at Photoshop, you don't have to keep going to your toolbar. You can simply just hit the keys. I'm going to just go through this, rip through that like that, get my eraser, and erase out the little spot there that I didn't want to get. Let's see, make it smaller. Okay, and let me go through here. Gosh, I have to do it this way. Let me go back to my brush, make my brush a lot smaller. Sometimes when you try to do it the lazy way, it doesn't always work out. And so, okay, that's decent. Let me push the space bar, let me bring it up a little bit. Go back to my brush, okay. Let me make the brush a little larger. And fill it in. Now, I'm going over this yellow area right here, and it's kind of hard to tell where the red actually is going. And what you can do is actually, you can come up here, and if you double click your quick mask button, you can actually change the red to a different color. You can change it to blue. Maybe the blue will show up better. And you can increase the opacity to say 75%. And so you can see there, and so maybe that's easier on your eyes. And so the red is the default color, and the blue, or whatever you want to change it, you can do that. Now let me make my brush a little smaller so I can get into that little spot there. I need to make it a little bit smaller than that. Okay. Go around this corner, and I'll go off the screen just for a second, and let me paint this in. Okay. Now you can use your paint bucket too and try to get a lot of this area too, but I just do it with the paintbrush. To me, that's just the way I do it. But as always, in Photoshop, there's 3.5 ways to basically do everything, and so you just need to do what's most comfortable for you. So I'm painting this in here, and I'll paint it a little bit more. Okay, make sure I get everything, and let's get his little head here, and then at the body, and we'll just go over this like that, and we'll go over this. Okay, let's make it smaller. We'll go to the 1 pixel brush. Cover up these little spots there. And I'll zip in here. And come in here. I'm out a little bit in spots, but you get the idea. The 1 pixel brush, so I'll try to do the antenna. And let's see. It's decent. That's good enough for government work, as they say, right? And I keep going. And I keep going, I keep going, I keep going. Okay. That looks like pretty much most of the butterfly there. Okay, let me bring it up here. And so what I can do now is let me exit quick mask mode. So I'm going to select here, go back to standard mode, and you can see the dancing ants, right? And so if I wanted to, I could simply hit delete, and bam, I have everything gone except for the butterfly, right? I'm going to go Control D to take that off. Now one of the things that I like doing is, let me go back here, and when I'm at this point, we know this area is what's selected, right? Because that's what we deleted out, right? And so what we can go up here is go to select and select inverse. Now when you do that, it's going to select the opposite side. So right now it's selecting the background. Let me select inverse, and now it's going to grab the butterfly. You can see that where it has a butterfly. And so what we can do now is simply just edit and copy, because it has what we want, the butterfly, right? So now if we go to our template, we can now simply, let me put the template back up into the middle here. Now we can simply go up to edit and paste, and it should paste in. Where did it do it? There it goes. Okay. It should paste in. Let me get back up here. Let me get the move tool. Oops. And here it is. Now it's small because it was 72 dpi on the original image, and so let me go ahead and free transform and blow this butterfly up here, or increase his size, right? Whoops. Undo that. Let me hold down the shift button instead of the option key, and that should help out a lot. And so now let me hit enter, and we'll get our little butterfly going here. And so now we have this giant butterfly here. Remember, if you hit free transform, you can spin it around if you want to spin it around. Move it wherever you want. If we want to desaturate it, take the color away, we can come up here to image adjustments and desaturate it. We can change hues. We can do color balance, where we can take and adjust the reds. We can make it magenta, or have magenta stronger, or we can crank up the blues, or we can crank up the yellows, right? And so there's a lot of different things you can do in this image, the adjustments, right? A lot of different functions. We can increase the brightness or contrast. This is one that people use all the time. So we're going to make it the contrast between the elements stronger, or we're going to take it all the way down and make the contrast in the elements almost negligible. right? And so remember, you have all these little sliders that you can play around with and get your image exactly the way you want, right? Maybe we should put in let's put in a drop shadow, right? How do we do that? Remember, we simply double click it, and hopefully the layers palette will jump up here, okay? And we can simply add a drop shadow to that butterfly. Kind of separates it off a little bit. Let's maybe make it a little bit larger, the shadow. Right there in the background, the spread, we can increase the spread. I don't like that too much. No, that's okay, I like that a little bit. We increase this distance a little bit. That's okay, I like that. Let me hit OK. So now we have this little butterfly here, and he's become almost a moth looking butterfly. We can move him around wherever we want. Now remember, right now he's on top, but if for some reason we wanted him under the template, we can just pull him underneath that template, and so he'll disappear. Here in one moment, you can see he's underneath. And so you can put things on top, underneath, above, and move it around. And that's the power of Photoshop, is because you have these layers and you can move them around where you want. And so that's basically why Photoshop is such a strong application. I think that's about all I'll show you today in this little tutorial. Just to recap, I showed you how to do the template. Remember, bringing images in, we can resize them with the free transform tool, adjust them, flip them vertical, flip them horizontal, so they're true opposites. Oh, let me show you one more thing. Here we have the butterfly. I'm going to pull him above the template. One thing we can do also, which I like doing, right now we don't have actually opposite areas, right? We haven't actually inverted anything, and that's one of the most important things. So let me open up our little background file here, and we could go in and simply select an area and say Control I. Remember, Control I was the invert, and we can make it opposite there. So these two are now opposites. We can go in here to this one and hit Control I also, and flip the color on that one, or flip the black and white on that one. So now it's not going to do it that dramatically, because although here we can see this is green and this is magenta, here, because we have that texture overlay, let's take that off, the pattern overlay, excuse me, that is why it didn't change that much. We could go up here into both of them and take the pattern overlay off. So just so you can see that we did invert the two. They're both colored, the magenta and the green. But one thing that's kind of neat is coming up here and using the marquee tool and getting the ellipse, or the elliptical marquee tool. And what we can do is go right in the middle of the design here, and what I'm going to do is hold my shift button down so I get a nice kind of perfect circle, and I'm going to pull it off there in the middle, and that kind of looks like the middle. I'm hitting the butterfly right here on both sides. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this file, and I'm going to go up to the top layer. I'll go to this layer right here. And what we can use is down here where it says, it has the little half pie. If you click on that, you have some options. And one of the options is to invert. And what's nice about selecting here the little mask layers is that it actually does it on everything underneath it. And so I'm going to hit invert, and you can see here this little thing popped up here, you can see, and it actually is doing it with everything underneath it, right? And so if I pull this down, well, let me show you here. If I select this butterfly, and let me get the move tool, I'll move him in to this area. You can see how he's going from red to kind of blue there, right? And so he's flipping, right? We can pull this up higher and or lower if we wanted to pull it underneath the butterfly. You can see now it's underneath it. Let me pull that back. Let me go and do that. Excuse me. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to select the whole thing. Pull it underneath. There we go. You can see it pulled it underneath there as well. If there were spots that if there was other things in there that we wanted to move, like we could grab this and pull it up over the top there. We can actually, if we select this circle, we can actually move it around to different spots. If we want to move it over here, if we want to say duplicate it, if we want to duplicate it, let me pull it down here. If you pull it down here to this little symbol that has like on a folded piece of paper. It'll duplicate that layer. So now we have two of these inverted mask layers, and you go, well, it disappeared. Where'd it go? Only thing I can see now is a circle. But when you have the two inverted over one another, just think of it like two minus signs in a math equation. Minus minus plus minus basically cancel each other out, right? And so if we actually move this over, now you can see, oh, okay, they're just on top of one another. So we can pull this to the other side. Move it up a little bit. And so you can play with these little inverted areas, these little layer masks here and there, and it makes for a very interesting, very dynamic image. And so it's quite very interesting. There's other ones that you can mess around with also. One of the ones that you probably want to do is the curves. Curves basically adjusts the shadows and the highlights. You can see it put it right here, so we can actually take this and we pull it down, and this is going to be the shadowed area. So we're amplifying the shadows, and if we grab up here, let's amplify the highlights. You can see now the highlights are really strong, and so the colors are fully saturated. You can go a little crazy and pull this into different configurations, if I can get it to go in there, and it really will burn those colors in. One thing you can do if you get to a point where you're like, ooh, I don't really like that, but I still want to play with the curves, if you simply hold the Alt button down, the Alt or the Option button down, you can see where the cancel goes to reset. And if I can hit reset there, you can see there it reset all the shadows and highlights. Let me just pull the shadows down a little bit and amp up the highlights just a little bit. And that looks good to me, so we'll hit OK. And so those are some basic functions here. You can see where you can play with that layer masks, the invert, the curves, do drop shadows, pull in different textures and backgrounds to build up this design. And that's what you want to do. You want to incorporate a lot of different images together to make really interesting composition.